Okay, please put your claws together for the host of the Object Podcast, Tim Gihring.
Awesome. Thank you. A big thank you to Dexter, the dancing lobster. She is running the show today, believe it or not. So if you like the show, please tell her for me. I don't think she'll be talking to me after this. Thank you also to our sponsor, Ameriprise Financial. I believe we have some Ameriprise folks in the house tonight. Thank you for coming. If you're in the market for a new financial planner, talk to them after the show. Just don't talk about the market. This is a family show. We've got a great show for you today. Dessa is here with us. And we are taping the podcast today, so please don't be quiet. If we wanted absolute silence, we would have taped this over at the Walker. Hey now. We're all friends. How many of you forgot it was Mother's Day and we're like, whatever, we're going to come to the show anyway? Actually, dang, Dessa. Well, thank you for being here with us instead of your mother. You definitely made the wrong choice. But you can call her later. We do have a Lobster phone, so you can use that. It is also Salvador Dalí's birthday today. His, Dalí, yes. His mustache is 121 years old today. How many of you are familiar with Salvador Dalí? All right, that's great. The surrealist answer to that question, by the way, is fish. It's all about the sea creatures with these guys. Well, let's get started. Let's see how well you know Dalí and his fellow surrealists. Our first quiz of the day. Hello, Dalí. Can I get 2 volunteers to play our quiz? Okay, right there. I see a hand, and I see a hand right here. Okay, come on up here, stage left, I guess. Come on up to the mic. You guys will be a team, okay? So come to the mic so we can hear you, if you wouldn't mind circling around the mic. And who do we have? Give me your name and address, and I don't know. No, name is good.
My name is Zach.
Zach, all right. Caroline, great. Thank you for playing today. All right, are you ready? All right, we got 3 questions, multiple choice, if I can get to my script. Slide, please. All right, the word surrealism was invented, you can follow along here. The word surrealism was invented in 1917 by the poet Guillaume Apollinaire, meaning beyond reality. What was he referring to? There we go. I could have done that, but I didn't think of it. Was it A, Salvador Dalí driving around Paris handing out cauliflower? Was it B, a dreamlike ballet about a circus parade? Or was it C, an art exhibition where visitors were given axes to destroy the artworks?
Wow. I want it to be C, but I'm leaning towards B. What are you thinking?
I feel very similarly. Yeah, I think that's.
All right, we're leaning B.
Anyone want to give us some encouragement from the audience? C, B, D. I heard D.
That might
Okay,
be the right
guys.
answer, actually. These could all be trick questions.
Yeah,
They're
all
all
the above.
surrealists here. Final answer. What do you think?
C.
Little
C?
feedback.
C. Why not?
The answer is B. It was a ballet designed by, the set design was by Pablo Picasso, Eric Satie.
Excellent. Thank you, Dessa. Ladies and gentlemen, the consummate professional, Dessa.
That's right, here we are, yes. But these other things did happen too. Kids don't take cauliflower from strange men in cars. Question number 2. All right, Dalí is famous for his images of melting clocks and his 1931 painting, The Persistence of Memory. What inspired these clocks, according to Dalí? Was it A, a piece of camembert cheese left in the sun? Was it B, Einstein's theory of relativity? Or was it C, that time he left his pocket watch in his trousers and it went through the dryer?
We've all done C, I think. That's the clue. So we went with my instinct last time. Let's go with your instinct this time.
Last time I had the same instinct. I don't thought it through.
Oh, it's not C. It's
You
either,
can't go wrong.
I'm thinking B if it works out time-wise.
Thinking B, Einstein?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes people, like, sometimes the hosts encourage us to
Oh,
get the right answer.
sometimes they do.
Sometimes they do.
Not here. Okay,
And
folks.
how well can I read upside down?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry. A lot of people think it's B. It is actually A. It actually was, according to Dalí, so take it for what it's worth, right? It was a piece of camembert cheese left in the sun. All right, we've got one left. One more chance to redeem yourselves. Question 3. So Dalí famously had a long handlebar mustache, right? When his body was dug up in 2017, almost 30 years after his death, what was discovered about his mustache? Was it A, it was actually made of marmalade? Was it B, it had been cut off his face and stolen? Or C, it was pointing to 10 minutes after 10, exactly like he usually wore it? What do we think?
I'm hearing C from the audience. What do you
Hearing
think
some
about that?
C's over here, okay.
B?
B?
B's kind
It's
of the
a lot
most
work to
exciting
dig
one.
someone up, and or I guess they could have cut it off before he was buried, though.
Would it still be there that long after his death?
Oh yeah, you would just like not-
Well,
yeah.
do we have an answer?
Go ahead.
Oh, B?
Was it B? Okay, we're going with B.
I guess.
The answer is C.
I knew it.
It was exactly the way he left it. Had somehow not changed after 30 years of decay. Maybe it was all that cauliflower he ate. Well-preserved man. Thank you for playing. Before you go, we have a couple of gift bags. All right? There you go. Here you go. Thank you so much. All right. My guest today has made a career out of defying expectations. A rapper, a writer, a raconteur. She has performed at both Lollapalooza and with the Minnesota Orchestra. She has written for the New York Times and most recently a cocktail book of recipes and essays based on her music. She's lectured on art and philosophy, hosted a BBC radio show on the science of being human, and is all around one of the most thoughtful humans in any room she's in. Please welcome Dessa. Thank you, Dessa. Welcome back to MIA. Thank you for being here for our shenanigans today. Really appreciate that. I have it on good authority, by which I mean a person dressed as a lobster, that when she first asked if you'd be interested in talking about surrealism, you kind of danced this little jig. And what gets you excited about surrealism? What do you like about it?
I was really stoked, but as I remember it, and maybe the lobster will later fact check me, but I remember being in line here at MIA and Dexter the not yet a lobster, coming over and asking if I'd be interested in talking about Dalí. I don't know that much about probably any artistic movement, but I think Dalí, for a lot of us, like, there is something about his art that is like particularly resonant with like an adolescent and early 20s mind. And I don't want to imply that that's where he ought be abandoned, you know, as we moved into adulthood. But I think like a lot of folks, that was the first surrealist work that I'd probably come across in the visual realm, maybe before I knew the word, what surreal, you know, before I'd heard the term. And the persistence, like the melting clock image, for me, yeah, it is. I have referenced that in so many essays and in, you know, of my own work. I just think it's such an impactful piece, and I think that there's like a few artists that when we discover them early like that, whether you're in high school and you're, you know, pulling some copyrighted work off of the internet to print out and like, you know, tape to your trapper keeper or whatever. I think, you know, Gustav Klimt and Salvador Dalí, I think for some reason they are just like magnetic to that kind of young formative mind.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that we talked about before the show also was this idea of surrealists not staying in their lane, right? Like Dalí did Alka-Seltzer commercials. He had these crazy wild events. He designed logos. He wrote a cookbook. There was kind of a permission structure within surrealism to some extent to do this. And I wonder, you know, how that hits for you. Like, you know, how do you think about staying between the lines and sort of the risks and rewards of you know, choosing a lane?
It made me feel like an absolute hypocrite because when I hear somebody say that a given artist works across lanes or spans genres, my first impulse is to lean in. I love when people do that. I think like the first time that I saw work by FKA Twigs, and it was like, wait, is this a visual thing or an auditory thing? And I think the answer is it's that thing. She made the thing. So yeah, if you don't watch it without the video, maybe it is reduced. If you were to only listen to it with the sound off, maybe it is reduced because she decided to make something that bridged, spanned, and included more than one traditionally identified. You know what I mean? Like, but then when the question went to the Alka-Seltzer thing, I was like, that's not a lane. But then when the question kept going to he made a cookbook, I was like, I made a recipe book.
Yes.
So I do tend to think of like artistic breadth and genre blurring, line, you know, moving and weaving through and across disciplines. I do tend to think of that differently. Then I think of the money side, I guess, which is, hey, he didn't make amazing art about Alka-Seltzer. He was, you know, he decided to hop on TV and sell some of it. So to me, that and we can argue about like, yeah, hell yeah, get your money, Dalí, you know, but to me that feels like it exists outside of the parameter that I would draw for his aesthetic and artistic life. That was in his more commercial life.
Yeah, I mean, there's this thing about like what's good for the art, what's good for the artist, right? That's like, you have to negotiate that. Yeah.
Will you help me? I mean,
I don't know that I'm the person, but yeah, no, I mean,
I think about this
the
a
more
lot.
you're in the business, like,
and also just like, even before you get to the business part, you know, so
Yeah.
for the reason I said that about that doesn't feel like a lane, I think some artists do commercial art, obviously, right? Like, hey, will you score this ad for a car? Okay, yes, that's using musical talent towards a commercial end, which feels different to me than Dalí lending his likeness to a product, right? But I would say that what's good for the art and good for the artist, I think that there can be so much conflict in that even before you get to how to make money. I always think, and I have a picture of a ballerina on point, 1 foot shoed and 1 foot bare, because you are reminded they are broken. Just to do the thing, right? Before Alka-Seltzer or any licensing comes into play, like, you will ruin yourself to do that. And you think about gymnasts who flip themselves apart, right? Like I heard somebody say, and I can't, yeah, literally, like I heard somebody say that part of the reason that for flipping gymnasts, part of the reason they're so good when they're young isn't only because of the lithe, limber, hyper flexible joints, but it's because they're flipping so ambitiously because they ain't broken nothing yet.
oh.
They're not afraid of landing wrong on an ankle because they haven't done it quite yet, so they're gunning super, super hard. Yeah, I think art in and of itself can grind you down. You know, it's like a pencil, you use it till it's gone.
Yeah. Oh, dang. Mic drop. So there's this element of the absurd in surrealism, right? Like the Lobster phone itself. And I've wondered about your relationship with humor in your work, you know, because the music business, you know, it wants you to be this one thing. It wants you to be tough, or it wants you to be sexy or whatever. And I love how you weave humor and the absurd into your work. And you brought a clip today for us from your video from Hurricane Party. And Do you want to set this up for us at all? Should we watch and talk, or?
Here's me saving a fish. For listeners, I've entered a grocery store. I'm wearing an athletic jumpsuit.
Fill the kiddie pool up with Prosecco. Get the LEDs on, need the spectacle. Gotta beat the one last week. Let's get a record. If you're trying to be a go-getter, you gotta go.
I'm being handed a fish right in the
Desperate
shop.
times call for desperate pleasures.
And to find out what happens, you'll have to tune in to the hurricane party video. Yeah, you know, I find it really difficult to be funny in music. And so I think a lot of times when I'm first hanging out with somebody, even like my boyfriend, like I think he thought, understand me, I was gonna be super serious and absolutely policing every conversation, you know, like, and I'm goofier, I think, as a human than I am as a musician. And I think that's because for me, anyway, humor is so much about timing, and music, at least the kind that I make, is quantized. So you can't hold it indefinitely or you miss the one, you know what I mean? And so for me, I feel much more comfortable using humor when I'm in non-metric forms. And so on the page, I feel more comfortable with it. Short sentence, absolutely indefensibly long sentence with many subjunctive set-off clauses in parentheses and then one in an M dash, right? and you can't just go off grid like that. I can't anyway, musically. So I think I've been slow to learn how to incorporate some of the goof and some of the funniness in music because I find it more challenging than I do either on page or just speaking on stage.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that video, though. Where was that? What was that scene?
So, okay, the song Hurricane Party itself was on a record called Bury the Lead, Uncle Seltzer. And that record was very much kind of in response to like the darkness post-pandemic, 2020, George Floyd, so much heaviness appropriately to grapple with, and like feeling like there has to be some levity and some joy to make all this grappling worthwhile. And so in that song, I sing about the phenomenon of the hurricane party, which happens in, you know, some places, in that kind of band of storms. Big storm's coming, everybody get into my house, we're gonna load up on booze and food and dance and batten the hatches while it blows over, you know?
And fish.
And in this case, so it's like, how are you gonna make a video? Importantly, how are you gonna make a video with $3,000 US? And so I ended up like, man, I was so lucky to work with this fantastically talented director, Lucian Calabay. And I ended up like tweeting, does anybody have an aquarium we could use or a grocery store? It will come at 2 a.m. when it's closed. And so we were very graciously led into like underwater world at the Mall of America before like an 8th grade class had to be there. So we shot this kind of weird surreal narrative about getting this fish from a grocery store and then releasing it back into the wild of the Mall of America. Yeah.
Amazing. All right, Whole Foods, right?
Whole Foods. We got that fish from a fishmonger at Whole Foods here locally in Minneapolis.
Awesome. I want to talk about sort of your poetic imagination and how you access that, but you have written several books of poetry, including the book of stage poems called Tits on the Moon. All right, you all have this. I have to thank you for putting this in such a small wrapper here that when I went to look for this at the library, at the public library, I could not find it. It's like this, there's nothing on the spine. I was like, okay, please don't make me go up and ask, like, I'm looking for a book. It's called Tits on the Moon. But you did bring us something to read today.
I did.
Yeah, all right.
Is it go time? Is it poetry time?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. This is a poem that I'd like to dedicate to all of the nearsighted unilateral astigmatism folks in the room. And it's called Acuvue, which is my preferred brand of contact lenses. Soft contact lenses are like helper jellyfish. Each one comes in a tiny plastic dish, sealed with foil and floating in a private pool of sterile tears. They last 2 weeks, and you are not supposed to sleep with them. The wetness of the saline and the wetness of my eye suck the contact in to fit and pull the focus of the world. Objects that have melted into one another overnight separate like dancers parted by the gym lights. The hex tiles of the bathroom floor snap crisp. My reflected face reports the freckle census. My interior, even, is corrected. Capillaries, distinct now from red, round organ meat. Bones cratered by tiny pores, each tumbling blood cell neatly dimpled. Outside my apartment, the leaves on every tree secede from the collective green to stand alone with one vote only. Distant street signs crystallize to tell me where I am and what I may not do. 2 weeks spin by in 2020, and we are at my favorite part. On the evening of the final day, I like to whisk one lens out and fling it. Sometimes while I'm walking, sometimes while I'm talking on the phone, I'll just drop it and let the lines relax around me. Let the convex wonder flutter like still soft, warm robot flesh. Then I'll do the other. In the morning, my right eye gets it first. I stage the small thing on a fingertip, like the petal of a flower that was not approved for manufacture, made of the gel in which the universe was prototyped, before it was infused with substance and with color, before there was enough to see to make seeing worth the trouble. I lean in and absorb it like cocaine off a key, and stand there half corrected, one eye in each world. Now it's time to load the left, amniotic, barely blue, a thin-shaved slip of sky. It clings, then settles into place between the iris and the lid, between myself and me. You gotta save some for the second poem. I'm working and have been working for like 10 years on a tiny collection of poems called A Guide to All Creation. That's like kind of a secular alternate to the Book of Genesis. And this poem is called How to Make the Fishes. How to make the fishes. Start with a solid block of flesh, chilled. Set aside half a cup of mercury, a quarter pound of slivered bone, extra virgin olive oil, and a ballpoint pen. Preheat the oven to 45 degrees. Bring mercury and pen to a boil. Lie down on the linoleum, stirring occasionally. Add salt and ash to taste, set aside uncovered. Left on the counter for a lunar month, the fishes will make themselves. They will talk incessantly at first, but should go dumb by the third day. They must be taught to breathe water, must unlearn multiplication and astronomy, must be prevented from singing, unionizing, but they cannot be kept from cursive. They'll swim it as if guided by a single stylus. Lifted from the tub, the lone fish will still flex and bend with all the others if you fold him in your hands by force. The rest will jackknife in the water until he is let to spring flat and fast again. For all our other feats of husbandry, no one can design the fish who will not swim out his complaints longhand at being made.
No, we're good. Phone call. Thank you, Dessa.
Thanks.
Neither of those poems is in Tits on the Moon, right?
No.
But you should go still ask for it at the library. You should go ask for it. I do have one more question. I skipped over. How did you discover your gift for wordplay, and how do you access your poetic imagination?
I mean, I think, like a lot of us, whatever you're good at, there's some portion of it that is probably owed to disposition, whether that's conditioning before you were really an agent in your own life, or genes, or something weird that we haven't yet discovered yet in the way that our brains fold together while we're still gelling. But for me, I've worked hard to try to hone it, but I admit that I was always good at language, and I was always bad at spatial stuff. I got lost coming back from the bathroom twice. I think for whatever reason, like the language part of my brain, that one fires fast. And so I'm wary sometimes about taking credit for unearned things, because I think it's easy to inadvertently applaud our own grit and development when like a pretty good that Yogi Berra thing, like you're born on third base and spend your whole life thinking you hit a home run.
Yeah. Awesome. Dessa, thank you.
Thanks.
So we had planned to have a curator here to talk with us about Surrealism and Dalí, but neither Max Bryant nor Galina Olmsted, two of our European curators here at the museum, could be here today. You know what? Fuck it, we got a Lobster phone. Hey! Let's call him.
Hello?
Hey, Galina, it's Tim at Mia.
Oh, hey, Tim. I'm actually here with Max. Let me put you on speakerphone.
Hi, Tim.
Wow, Max, that's great. And totally believable. So I'm here with Dessa and like 300 people, and we have a few questions for you about surrealism in the Lobster phone.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sounds great.
So tell us a little bit about the roots of surrealism. What's happening that drives these artists to make melting clocks and lobster phones?
So Surrealism really has its origins as a literary movement that's happening in Paris among a group of French poets and art critics. And so it really starts with André Breton, and he publishes his manifesto on Surrealism in 1924. And it's really rooted in this idea of a new mode of expression called automatic writing. The idea that you could tap into some unknowable imagination and creativity that's part of your subconscious. And they're reluctant at first to partner with visual artists or to include the visual arts in the work that they're doing, because they see art making as inherently laborious, right? That it takes a lot of energy and concentration to draw and to paint and to make sculptures. And so at first they're pretty territorial, but then eventually it's a movement that expands to include the visual arts and to include political thought and intellectual thought, and it really becomes a sort of all-consuming movement of the 1920s and into the 1930s.
Got it. So there's this element of protest along with the absurd, right? They're essentially giving the finger to the status quo.
It develops out of the consequences of World War I. So the death and destruction that's part of that war is a real shock to the system, culturally, politically, artistically. And all of that contributes to what makes surrealism what it is at that moment. It's also drawing from other parts of the culture, right? So the writings and thinking of people like Sigmund Freud and Karl Marx are all sort of extending their tentacles into the kind of work that the surrealists are doing. It's very much a product of its moment. It's hard to imagine surrealism before the war or at any other moment in history. It's so specific to the 1920s.
It has this very serious starting point of like traumatized people who are shell-shocked and exploring their like psychology, and also like the grief of people and the sort of automatic writing that comes out of spiritualism and those kinds of contexts as well. But then pretty soon it becomes about putting lobsters on phones.
It gets pretty absurd pretty quickly. So there's this first generation of, I mean, they're all of the same generation. So I guess you could say it's this first wave of surrealist visual artists. And it's people like Masson and Miro, and that's the sort of automatic drawing. So they take the tenets of automatic writing and they just put pen to paper in a different way, and they're sort of doing a kind of abstraction that's about tapping into your subconscious. The sort of second wave of surrealism in the visual arts is artists like Dalí, of course, like Magritte, like Tanguy, and that's more illusionistic surrealism. So they're really interested in playing with this line between illusion and reality, and that's where things get silly.
So somehow Dalí manages to get kicked out. Like, what exactly does a person have to do to be ejected from a surrealist movement? I think I perhaps naively imagined this scene would be populated by a pretty permissible crowd, but was it really like a self-policing group of purists?
Dalí is resistant to sort of the public denunciation of fascism in a way that really irritates his fellow surrealists. Irritates is probably an understatement. And they actually put him up for this sort of trial in 1934, and he like barely squeaks by, and they say he can still be a part of the group. But it's all predicated on his refusal to publicly denounce fascism. He believes that surrealism as an artistic movement can be apolitical. And his colleagues in that movement don't agree.
He gave these interviews where he was like saying how he was turned on by Hitler.
Yeah, so it's not like
I mean, call me a
he's not
Puritan,
an edge
but
case. Yeah, it's not like, oh, was he maybe into it? Like, he was into it. I mean, they don't want to have artists at all, and then they sort of expand, but they're picky about who's in and who's not in. It's not a bohemian wonderland.
Well, let's talk about Dalí's lobster phones for a minute. What is it with surrealists and sea creatures? Is it just about aphrodisiac, sex, or is it about humor? Because sea creatures are kind of funny looking.
I think you're right, it's a bit of both, but sea creatures have been associated with aphrodisiacs since antiquity. Venus is born out of a shell. And there is high zinc content in lobsters, apparently, which is supposed to be good for that. And the idea of the phone, I think in part, was that the sexual organs of the lobster are in the tail of the lobster. So it's kind of like this elaborate joke on cunnilingus.
Well, Dalí designed these phones for this guy, Edward James. Max, you've been to one of his homes in England. What do we know about his attraction to surrealism?
He's one of the richest people in the country, kind of same generation as Howard Hughes, similar kind of personality too. He falls in love with an Austrian dancer, and they get married, and it's immediately a disaster because she assumed he was gay, which he was, but she then goes off and immediately is having lots of affairs. And his way of getting her back and proving that he's straight is to found a ballet company. And this doesn't work, but it puts him in contact with all these French patrons of the arts. He decides to renovate his house in 1935. He has a hunting lodge that's on the estate of Westdean called Monkton, which Edward James hated and decided to completely change by having it painted purple and having, in the surrealist manner, all different things being made to look like different things. So the columns turned into palm trees and so on. As part of that, he commissions these phones.
Okay, so Mia's website refers to some iterations of the aphrodisiac telephone as potentially functional. Are you telling me that no one has plugged them in to try them?
That's a question that I'm intrigued by. There was a very short window after these phones were made before James himself leaves England to go to America, very sensibly in early 1939. So he would only have had them for a couple of months. The phone companies supplied the phones at that time, so would not have been able to just plug in any old phone into a line. I hope that in that short time before he left for a long time that he did actually use these phones. I'm sorry, that's not a very surreal answer to your question.
Good enough. Listen, we'll let you get back to whatever it is you're doing, okay? Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Dessa, thank you for playing We'll have you back up in a bit for our last quiz. Okay, now it's time for our story. Got to get rid of this lobster phone. It's here if you need it, folks. All right. Well, let's go back to 1936, springtime in England, where Salvador Dalí is on the southeast coast trying on a deep-sea diving suit. The kind with the copper helmet and the peepholes. You look in and there's Dalí, his eyes dark and wide like a squid's, a magician stuck in his own illusion. How deep do you intend to go? The salesman asks him. I am diving into the depths of the human subconscious. Well, the salesman says, just don't go below 30 meters. In London, the first international exhibition of Surrealism is coming together, with works by Dalí and Picasso and Magritte and Calder and many more. Opening day, the poet Dylan Thomas will offer teacups of boiled string. A painter will carry around a pork chop. It is not just another amusing stunt, claims an organizer of the show. It is defiant, the desperate act of men too profoundly convinced of the rottenness of our civilization to want to save a shred of its respectability. A few weeks after opening, Dalí arrives in the diving suit. Pool cue in one hand, 2 wolfhounds in the other. He was asked to lecture about Harpo Marx, the comedian. Instead, he talks about authentic paranoid phantoms. Surrealists are like beetles, he says, eating through the dead wood of the rational world. Sturgeons swimming between the warm water of science and the cool water of art. No one seems to understand him, because he's speaking in broken French through a diving helmet into a booming microphone, like the voice of Poseidon, and also because he's suffocating. The helmet is stuck. He hands the pool cue to someone who uses it like a can opener until there's Dalí again, soaked with sweat. Wetter, he says, than if he had actually been in the water. Later that night, Dalí receives a telegram. There had been a new friend at the lecture who had rescued him from the helmet with the pool cue, who would later buy almost every piece in the show, who, like Dalí, has a thing for lobsters. Really, Dalí, the telegram reads, you are impossible. Well, Dalí has always been impossible. When he's born in Spain on May 11, 1904, he is the second child in the family, and also the first, as far as his parents are concerned. A younger brother named Salvador had died 9 months before Dalí came along, and his parents decide the second Salvador is in fact the first, reincarnated. They take them to his brother's grave and tell him they are one and the same, at once dead and alive. Like 2 drops of water, he would say, with different reflections. He is well loved, especially by his mother, and badly punished, especially by his father. He throws himself down the stairs, early and often. When he's 5, he throws a friend off a bridge, just to see what happens. He is 16 when his mother dies, 17 when his father remarries to his mother's sister. Dalí decides it's time for art school. Here he reads about Freud, about the subconscious. And from then on, he often draws his dreams. He keeps an easel by the bed, draws some things over and over, ants, melting clocks, and at some point, telephones. Telephone frappe, telephones on the leash, screwed to the back of a living turtle, he will write. Edgar Allan Poe telephones with a dead rat within. Aphrodisiac telephone, lobster telephone. Telephones, telephones, telephones. I don't do drugs, he will also say. I am drugs. Meanwhile, over in England, Edward James has grown up on his parents' estate in Sussex. King Edward VII is his godfather and possibly his father, period. His father is often away, shooting polar bears in Greenland and God knows what else. One day his mother dresses like a doll, climbs inside a box, and has herself delivered to the king. "Wind me up," she tells him, and then she dances. When he's young, James sits for hours in bed, inventing Aladdin's palace out of blankets. When he's older, he writes poetry. Mr. James, another poet writes, has too many possessions. Pictures by Picasso, estates in England, villas on the Riviera, yachts and aeroplanes. He also thinks he can buy the gift of being a poet. James reads this and never writes poetry again. In 1934, after his marriage has fallen apart, he goes to stay with a friend in France, a patron of the Surrealists and the great-granddaughter of the Marquis de Sade. One night, she slips into his bed, he says, like a moonbeam. But the person he really wants to know is the one who painted the portrait of her, hanging in the house. "Okay," she says, "you'll meet Dalí." James invites Dalí to his hunting lodge in the country, which he has been remodeling since his wife left. Too cottagecore, he thinks. So now the walls are padded like an asylum. The carpets have paw prints. His wolfhounds, he says, were more faithful than his wife. Dalí is like, "It's a start. What about walls that move, that breathe like a dog about to heave? We can cover them in dog hair." "Let's start with a couch," James thinks. And he asked Dalí to design one like the lips of Mae West, the actress, and a chair with two arms forming the back, hands ready to grab you. The house is starting to look, as James' biographer puts it, like a mad potentate's private brothel. I do not understand why, when I ask for a grilled lobster in a restaurant, I am never served a cooked telephone. Dalí has a lot of thoughts about lobsters and telephones. In 1938, at a Surrealism show in Paris, he displays a live lobster balanced on a phone with the title Aphrodisiac Telephone. That summer, he says to James, "What about lobster phones that actually work?" James is like, "I'll take 11. Now, for years, Dalí had been hoping to meet his hero, Sigmund Freud. And now, having fled the Nazis, Freud is in London. The meeting is arranged by Stefan Zweig, the Austrian writer who would later inspire Wes Anderson's film, The Grand Budapest Hotel. The day after the commission of the lobster telephones, Dalí and James go to Freud. Dalí brings a painting and an article he'd written on paranoia. Freud ignores the article. He turns to Zweig and says in German, "I have never seen a more complete example of a Spaniard. What a fanatic!" When he sees the painting, Freud says, "In classic paintings, I look for the unconscious. But in your paintings, I look for the conscious." It might have happened that very day in July 1938, but for the rest of his life, Dalí is preoccupied by money. He will design the logo for a snack food, Chupa Chups. He will sketch something on restaurant bills to avoid pain. And that summer, of course, he will create the lobster phones. Dalí has a plaster mold made from a real lobster, He fits a receiver inside, placing the lobster's tail, where the genitalia are located, directly over the mouthpiece. And by the end of the summer, they're at the lodge, 11 Aphrodisiac telephones. In August, Dalí will send James the bill. In 1939, they will work together one more time on a pavilion at the World's Fair in New York, entered through the legs of Botticelli's Venus. But Dalí swears off the project. He writes a manifesto, the declaration of the independence of the imagination and of the rights of man to his own madness. James will move to Mexico, build a city of follies in the jungle, live with a menagerie of toucans and boa constrictors. Dalí will never know what Freud actually thought of him. That Freud later told Zweig he had been inclined to look upon the surrealists as absolute cranks, but that the young Spaniard, with his candid eyes and fanatical eyes and his undeniable technical mastery, has made me reconsider my opinion. He will never know that long after his death, someone will build a lobster phone loaded with artificial intelligence and place it in a museum in Florida. A phone you can ask anything, and Dalí's voice will answer. His voice will tell you, for instance, about his breakfast, the, quote, surreal banquet of soft-boiled eggs, resembling the fragility of time itself, and crusty bread. Or how it felt to see the world differently in the 1930s. Society tiptoed around the psyche's labyrinth with wary steps, he will say, looked upon through the narrow lens of ignorance or fear. A true renaissance of the mind was what the era craved, yet it danced with shadows more often than light. That's our story for today. Thank you. All right, it's time now for our last quiz of the day. Surreal or Sir Elton? Let's get Dessa back up here. And let's get a volunteer for the audience. All right, I'm seeing you, sir, right here. Come on up. We're going to cross over. Come on up over here, stage left. All right, you guys are playing together. Sir, your name?
Michael Joseph.
Michael. All right, Michael, meet Dessa. Dessa,
Hey,
meet Michael.
Hey. Hey.
All right, you guys are a team. You're playing together?
Yeah.
You ready?
This
Okay.
makes me so nervous. I told you this in the notes. I get so... Okay, I'm ready.
I know, you'll be good. You got Michael.
I'm totally not going to be looking at my partner asking questions. What are you talking about?
All right, question number 1. Both Salvador Dalí and Elton John were known for some wild stunts. Which of the following did Sir Elton do? Did he wear a chicken costume on The Muppet Show? B, brought an anteater to a TV talk show? Or was it C, sold fake hair to Yoko Ono when she offered $10,000 for a lock?
I feel like I kind of want to do the same technique you do when you're trying to figure out where to go to lunch. Like, I'm going to say the one that I don't think it is. And then you tell me of the remaining 2, which one you nix. I think it's not the Yoko one.
I also agree that is not the Yoko one.
Right, anteater or chicken?
I feel like anteater, like, where do you source an anteater?
I mean, you gotta go like what, Australia for that?
In the 1950s.
Yeah,
right?
chicken. Let's do chicken.
Chicken.
You were right.
Hey!
There he is. Woo! I haven't seen this episode, but apparently one of the Muppets tells him he dresses like a stolen car. Whatever that means. I don't know what that means. And the other things, those were things Dalí actually did.
Oh.
He did have an anteater on a talk show, and he did sell some fake hair to Yoko Ono. The man was all about the dollars, right? So,
Do you have an episode on those?
we need to do that. Let's do it.
Let's
All
do
right.
it.
Hey, I like your style.
Thank
I like
you.
the question. All right, question 2. Elton's longtime lyricist, Bernie, once met Salvador Dalí, who doodled something on a restaurant napkin and tossed it to him. What happened to that napkin? Was it A, Topin sold it and bought a townhome for his mother? Was it B, Dalí asked for it back and framed it? Or was it C, a hotel maid saw it in Topin's room and accidentally had it laundered?
I'm kind of thrown because I hear people in the audience mentioning a letter that I'm disinclined to consider. I was gonna nix B, which is the one for Dalí asking for it back and framing it. To me, it feels more likely that a hotel maid saw it or that a townhouse was purchased.
I think that it's C, but I also let's just do C. I did get some. Made.
Picking up on that?
Yeah.
You are right.
Hey!
Yeah, 2 for 2. It's kind of perfect for a surrealist object to just like disappear.
Yeah,
I like that. Yeah.
Honestly, that would be more comedic too.
Yeah.
It's more comedic.
It's gone.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Last one. Last chance. Question 3. Okay. 3 of these phrases are actual titles of paintings by Dalí. A 4th one is a reporter's description of Elton John at his 50th birthday party, which is the description of Sir Elton. Was it A, debris of an automobile giving birth to a blind horse fighting a telephone? Was it B, Louis XIV with a small Spanish galleon perched in his wig? Was it C, an exquisite cadaver? Or was it D, a hairdresser depressed by the persistent good weather?
Oh man. I think it's not A.
Yeah, definitely.
Michael, not so sure.
I mean, yes, but it's so wild that it could be. But I'm gonna go with you. Yeah.
Well, then you nix one of the remaining ones. So it's not a debris of an automobile giving birth to a blind horse biting a telephone.
And I feel like C is just too plain.
I agree.
Okay, cool. Okay. Cool.
So I think I could totally imagine Sir Elton with a small Spanish galleon perched in his wig. Or a hairdresser. Oh, did you hear that? Should we go with the audience?
A little bit of feedback here.
Can we phone a friend?
I think you just did, actually.
Yeah.
And you were right.
B?
It is B. 3 for 3. Nothing to be nervous about, Dessa. Thank you. All right. You aced the quiz. We're gonna get your goodie bag.
Thank you. Well done. Thank you.
All right, folks. That is our show for today. We're going to have a little Q&A afterwards if you want to stick around. Otherwise, thank you very much for coming. Dessa, can you hang with us for a bit?
Let's do it.
All right. We're going to be up front. We'll have a Q&A. Thank you so much for coming to this live taping.